All right, this is coming through just as we get on the show this morning. Nigeria's only E&P, that's Exploration and Production Oil and Gas Company, Seplat Petroleum PLC, listed in Nigeria and the London Stock Exchange, has announced that its Managing Director and Chief Executive, Austin Avuru, will be retiring as the Chief Executive Officer effective July 2020. Austin Avuru has completed 10 years, or will be completing his 10-year tenure as a CEO within the space by the month of July 2020, after 10 years of leading the company. In a statement issued this morning to the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Seplat says there's a transition for a new CEO to take over, but it's also someone coming in from within the company, Seplat Petroleum. Roger Brown, who is the CEO designate for Seplat Nigeria. He is currently the Chief Financial Officer and is the one who will be taking over from Austin Avuru, who has been in the leadership position at the CEO of Seplat Petroleum for the last 10 years. That's one market information coming through Seplat Nigeria. Seplat Petroleum has announced a transition period to July 2020, when Austin Avuru will be departing as the CEO of the company and will be taken over by Roger Brown. Roger Brown is currently the Chief Financial Officer. The transition period has been announced. Mr. Avuru will depart as the CEO on 31st of July 2020, but will remain on the board, according to a two-page statement issued by the company as part of the listing requirements for any company listed on the stock exchange. Mr. Austin Avuru, of course, pioneered Seplat Petroleum through one of his growth and development phase over the last 10 years. He was also part of the listing of Seplat PLC on the London Stock Exchange, one of the biggest Nigerian company listed on the London Stock Exchange, and one of the best Nigerian stories on that stock exchange in the UK. So Temple Ashaju is in this morning from studios at the Stock Exchange. Temple, good morning. We have a lot to talk about last week, but this is Seplat this morning announcing the retirement of Austin Avuru, whom we have known over the last 10 years as the CEO of the company, and he will be replaced, or there's a transition now for Roger Brown, Mr. Roger Brown, who will be taking over from 1st of August, technically speaking, 2020. Good morning, Temple. Hope you had a great weekend. Okay, I guess Temple is coming through there, trying to digest. Let's just show you very quickly where we finished off last week. The stock market was where a lot of trading action was. For the first time, in months, we gained more than 2% on the broad index because of the very interesting situation, a delinking of the open market operations for the Nigerian treasury bills by the central bank at the fixed income market. So we had the stock market gained 2.04% last week, very piping hot. We gained the 13 trillion naira back on the equity cap. That is the big story from the stock market. More than 2 billion shares, 33.876 billion naira in more than 21,000 transactions. Temple is back, and it's got all the nice details. Temple, look it up, look happy. Your stock market was up last week, so let's get it up and running.
Great, Bosun. We were up. I mean, we gained some 2.04%. We got the equity capitalization back to 13.07 trillion naira, as he hinted earlier, Bosun. That implies some 261 billion naira that we added to the equity capitalization of the exchange. If you take a look at the activity level, it was also positive. We saw some 2.084 billion units of shares traded for the entire period. And of course, I should add that this is actually the second consecutive week of gains that we're seeing in the market. And we do hope that that is sustainable, that continues, for the rest of this week as well. For the banking stocks, it was the most positive, up some 6.77%. We got consumer goods, which is also up some 255 basis points. Next to banking stocks directly is the industrial goods segment, which is up some 3.24%, even though we know that the cement subsector of that market actually experienced some 0.43% decline. Some other major sectors, apart from insurance and oil and gas, which are down, that also recorded declines, are telecom, which was also down by some 0.56%. We really don't know why investors are yet to start looking at the prices of MTN and, of course, Airtel Africa, in spite of the attractive dividends that are now given out to investors. But if you look at the performance across the stocks, of course, Wema Bank experienced the biggest gain, which was up some 28.81%. We got FBN Holdings up some 18.10%. And of course, Access Bank, Guinness, and of course, Dangote Sugar, all of these companies are raked in some cool gains for last week, week on week. Let's do the energy stocks now, where we saw no change specifically on Friday, in spite of the fact that we've seen O&O now coming back up to 3 naira 60 kobo. Made some gains for the week, actually. We saw on Friday alone 1.6 million units of its shares traded. And of course, there was no change on all the other major numbers that you have there. NASD OTC also wasn't left out of this wind of change that we're seeing in the market. Was up some 1.77% last week, week on week. We got the market capitalization up at 513.12 billion naira. Volume week to date, year to date rather, value as well as deals also continues to grow. For the debt market, we continue to see investors' appetite in the bond side of the market. That was sustained specifically on Friday, and of course, week to date. Yields continue to rally across the benchmark bond curve to close trading week much higher. The 2049 security remained the most actively traded bond, as the yields on this particular security dropped further by some 12 basis points following the demand, which we saw that also lowered its yields to 13% from that demand, of course, continues to come in from the local investors. If you look at the price there, continues to grow. Before now, it was at 111 naira, but look at it now. For Friday, it changed up to 112 naira 20 kobo. For the T-bills, the NT-bills and OMO maturity space, the last trading week saw foreign portfolio investors maintaining their buying interest on the short end of the OMO maturities. We saw that they're capitalizing on the widespread yields between the NTBs and, of course, the OMO maturities. NTBs actually saw sustained demand from local investors, but that was not as much as what we saw, on the OMO maturity space, where especially the 12th of November 2020 security that was recently introduced into the space also continued to make some gains. Deals for OMO maturities was actually 368 at a value of 130.56 billion naira, compared to what we saw on the NTB space, which is just 25 deals and at a value of 10.65 billion naira, Bosun.
Okay, Tempo, quite a very interesting scenario we had last week. But if you go back a little bit and put some of what is in the news out this morning, I'm sure you check in with Seplat for us a little bit later before we end the show. This news about Austin Avuru leaving as the CEO in July next year, and a transition period now underway with the Chief Financial Officer, Roger Brown, becoming the CEO designate. He'll be taking over effectively when Austin walks out of his office as a CEO. But the company says he will still remain on board. I'm sure Austin Avuru's tenure as the CEO at Seplat had been very interesting and very exciting for the company and for investors.
Correct, Bolson. I mean, that news coming in will be some sort of a surprise, but at the end of the day, if you look at it, it is more of corporate governance standards playing out on that company. Because again, corporate governance is something that Seplat actually prioritizes very, very well. This is a company that is tradable, listed here on the main board of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. It is also one of the top recognized companies in the market, priced as I think the second highest in terms of price in the market at over 500 naira. So it is something that investors will really will be bullish on. They do know that his tenure, he's been on board since the inception, since the company got listed in the stock exchange. And I think it's about time he now takes his leave. And of course, these will be able to continue to grow, to generate some positive reaction from the part of foreign and domestic investors. Again, under his tenure, we've seen so much of developments. We do know that they are involved in a gas project in Imo State. The Ano gas project is something that they're working on. He started it, and of course with the chairman, Mr. ABC Ojako, have the buy-in of the federal government on this as well. And of course, investors will continue to be bullish on it. I think where the attention will now be is where the incoming CEO how the incoming CEO will handle this project. What is his blueprints, his strategy for sustaining all of these developments that are on ground? Because again, we know that the federal government has also committed some billions of naira to that project. Locally, the company itself too has also committed some billions of naira to the project. How sustainable will all of these projects be under the new CEO? That's where the area of concern will be, or where the interest of investors will be at this point in time, Bosun.
Also, I'm sure the new CEO will have a very big shoe of Austin Navuru to step into. Remember, it was Austin Navuru that took the company to the markets, Lagos and London markets. That's a very big shoe to fill. But again, taking the Seplat into the next level will be a very key challenge. Tempo, again, if you remember, electric cars are coming. Folks are talking more about electric cars and driverless cars and what have you. Crude oil, as we know it, is beginning to get knocked by the side, even though Nigerian authorities believe that oil will still have a long way to go in our energy mix, as it were, globally. But again, getting Seplat into the future will be very interesting. If we pass the petroleum industry bill, I'm sure Seplat will be part of that conversation moving forward as well. So it's interesting times ahead also, and challenging time for the new incoming CEO.
It is, I agree with you, but that is again the reason why they're actually investing deep, they're intensifying their investments on the gas side of commodities, because again, they do really believe that the consumption of gas, cooking gas, and of course other variants of gas in Nigeria is really still low. They need to do something about that, which is why this project is something that a lot of investors will be of a huge interest to a lot of investors. They really will want to know how, as he said, this new CEO, Mr. Rogers, will want to take this business or this investment to the next level. How really they do expect that by the first quarter of 2021, this gas, they will be pumping out gas from the ANO project, or from the ANO site, which is in Imo State, somewhere in Imo State there. They do expect that the first delivery of gas will come at the first quarter of 2021. They really will want to know if that will be sustainable. The consumption of cooking gas in Nigeria is not something that has really gone round, and they do hope that by the time they really invest deeper into this and they hit fruition on this particular project, I mean, the consumption of gas will also grow. It will improve, and of course, that will top up their bottom line and their top line eventually, Bosun.
I'm sure we'll be keeping a very permanent eye on this change of leadership. You know, Austin Navuru has been in the front of every one of us who are also journalists. Very interesting fellow to interview as a CEO. You meet him at any local or international event. He's always willing to grant an interview. He understands the industry. So I'm sure we'll definitely miss Austin Navuru at Seplat Petroleum Development Company.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll miss him.
He's someone who's really accessible. He's very endearing.
Yes, very gentle man, and he just go about his business. Thank you so much, Tempo. We'll get back to you at the trading floor later on the show. We'll give you a sense of how today is starting off, if we're going to be able to keep our rally. But again, inflation is the big story today. Perhaps you have a few words from the stock traders. We'll hear from you later if this inflation on the uptick has anything to do with the equities market. What are traders' thoughts this morning on the equity side? Thank you so much, Tempo. I will get back to you in a few minutes. But let's first check in with the campaign for December 12 elections in the UK. We've heard so much from the front runners, but the key question is if they are offering the UK business community anything. What are they talking about? Will the business community benefit? What are they promising? We'll check it in with Juliana Layinka, my colleague, in London. She's joining us via Skype this morning. I beg your pardon, Assistant Temple and Juliana. Okay, all in the same sentence. Thank you very much. Pardon me, Juliana. Good morning. Hope you had a great weekend.
I had a great weekend, just not as bright as Temple, I'm afraid. You're stuck with me.
I understand, because the temperature here is about 30, 31 degrees. And what I've seen in the news is all wind blasting, chilly in the UK. That's two different worlds, if you want to tell me where we are right now.
Well, yes, it's absolutely freezing in the UK, but on to more important matters, which is the general election. We're bang in the middle, halfway through. It is the third week, and some observers are calling this week, Bosun, the most crucial week. And that's because leaders of the main parties will be addressing the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry. They're described as Britain's biggest business lobby group, and they represent the views of about 200,000 businesses. Now, their conference kicks off today, and we've got Prime Minister Boris Johnson really trying to woo this community and say that, the Conservatives are home for British businesses. They want to cut business rates, which has been a huge complaint and has seen many retail stores being shut down. We've got the leader of the opposition party, Jeremy Corbyn, promising apprenticeships. Now, apprenticeships are a big thing here in the UK because many young people don't want to go into traditional university and higher education. So he'll be offering business lobby groups that opportunity to grow their workplace. And then, of course, we've got the Liberal Democrats. And Joe Swinson is saying that their party is the home for businesses because they want to stop Brexit altogether. So an interesting mix, very different views. But the head of the CBI over the weekend has been speaking to the press. And of course, since Jeremy Corbyn said he wants to part nationalise BT, she said a vote for him would be at the brink of collapse for business in the UK. So really strong words coming from the head of the CBI over the weekend.
I'm sure this is all, the business community will have their own voice, their views as to how this election goes and Brexit. And I'm sure, as you said, a crunching week ahead of December 12th. But so let's talk about one or two business stories in the news. The UK Sage Group says it's doing some business combination with a banker in the US. Do you have more details about this, Juliana, for us?
I do have a little bit. Seems to be a good story for Sage Group. Sage Group are a software company that offer payment processes for small to medium-sized businesses across the UK and Ireland. They've got about 50,000 businesses on their books. They've just completed a deal with Eleven, which is a unit of the US Bancor Group, for over £200 million. This is going to take them way into the global stratosphere. The deal, if it does get the sign-off from the Federal Bank and the Ireland Central Bank, it will be completed in Q2 2020. Their shares didn't react much today, even though they are on the FTSE. But I suppose at intraday, once people start crunching the numbers, more detail will follow.
Okay. Finally, in terms of the banking sector, do we have any deal right now? Have we made any progress as to how bank customers in the UK will get refunded when you are defrauded, Juliana?
Well, at the moment, the simple answer is no, Bosun. That's what, the industry observers are saying. Last year, £1.2 billion was stolen by fraudsters of bank users. And one of the issues that people are saying is that the banks are too slow in trying to refund and compensate. A lot of the victims end up feeling as if, they are to blame for this. So the Financial Conduct Authority did sit down with 6 of the biggest banks in the UK, and they tried to come up with a way to make refunds a lot easier. And one of the suggestions earlier this year was that every £30 that would be removed from a bank would have a 3p charge. So that 3 pence would go to a bigger pool. So anytime anybody was, stolen from, there would be money that would be given to them. But unfortunately, the FCA has said banks have failed miserably to come together, and that the 3p levy charge hasn't been put into place. So really, what they're saying is they're putting a lot of, gusto on these banks and saying that this is a huge issue in the UK. And yes, there are things that need to be done by the government, but the banks need to come together to pay out these customers that are being, defrauded by millions, sometimes billions.
Very sad. 1.2 billion pounds. That's a pile of cash, if you ask me. Quite a pile of money. Cash. A lot of money. Thank you, Juliana. Keep your money safe. Whatever you can do, let's all do that. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and try to get some coffee and get cozy there at Cavendish Square. See you late in the afternoon with Chimezie Obiagu. We'll take a break. We'll be right back, everyone. Business Morning.